Welcome back to pregame.tv. I'm Marco D'Angelo, your host, joined by Ken Thomson, SportsX Radio here in Las Vegas. We're going to take a look at Central Florida at Memphis on Saturday. Now, this is definitely not one of the marquee matchups on the card, but Ken, you don't need marquee matchups to cash a ticket. You just got to get the right side, and I think I got the right side in this game. This is an interesting ball game. You got Central Florida. This is a team that's playing better than people expected. And they went into Penn State a couple weeks back, upset Penn State. I was on them in that game, loved them in that spot. Then they had a week off to prepare for last week's huge game against South Carolina. You have an SEC team coming into your building. That's a big game for a program like Central Florida. And they jumped out to a 10-0 lead at the half, and then South Carolina come back in the second half and scored the next 28 points, and then Central Florida made a late run, made the score look closer than it was. The final score was 28-24. Now, off of a game like that, when you're stepping way up in class, like Central Florida was, and it was a home game, you had a big crowd and everything, and you come up short. To me, that's where the warning signs go off that, you know, this is a spot where a team can come up flat in their next game.
Yeah, it's tough for Central Florida here because, like you said, that was a huge, monumental game. Because they still get good quality players in the state of Florida, no doubt. They've got some speed. They've got a good quarterback, Blake Bortles, running the show. But at the same time, they don't have the depth of those SEC teams, and they're kind of wore them down. But they made a nice run at the end. They covered the number. Give them credit for that. And that might be even more frustrating because they came oh so close. Now they have to get up for Memphis and take to the road against a team that comes to play each and every game over the last 2 years, which is nice to see.
Yeah, and Memphis has had 2 weeks to prepare for them. And, you know, you said about them covering the spread, and that made a lot of wise guys here in town because that was a popular play with a lot of sharps last week with Central Florida plus the points is the live home dog against the old ball coach.
I still think they're the one team, and I looked at Rutgers, and Rutgers went into Fresno, and they hung tough, and they beat Arkansas. They came back in that game. They're a little banged up. But I think Central Florida, because their depth, you know, as far as with speed positions, is the only team that's really going to test Louisville.
You know what? That is a great segue for me to make this one official.
You got it.
Let's make it official. All right, well, that's going to be one of the big parts of my handicap in this game is the look-ahead spot. This is a classic, what I want to call a sandwich game. You have Central Florida. They played Penn State. They upset them. Had the week off, had the big game with South Carolina, come up close, they lose it. Now they play a Memphis team. But more importantly, they do have next week off, so it's not like it's an immediate game, but it's still going to be on their radar. They've got Louisville up next. That is their absolute game of the year when they play Louisville. And that's, as Ken said, the only team I think left on Louisville's schedule that has a legitimate chance of beating them. You know, coming into the season, people talked Rutgers, people talked maybe Cincinnati, but those two teams haven't lived up to it. Central Florida is the only team that has exceeded expectations from what we thought at the beginning of the season. I also look at this Memphis team. This is a team that's on the rise, and they are flying under the radar. This is the second year for the head coach, Fuentes, for Memphis. He got this team going at the end of last season. They won their last 3 games in a row and actually covered 4 in a row to finish the season last year. Now, they opened up this year. They lost their first game, and they lost it by double digits, 2 touchdowns. But I got to point out, when they played that first game, that was their first game of the season, and they were playing a team that already had a game under their belt. That's a big advantage early in college football in the opening weeks when you get one team that hadn't played yet versus a team that got all of the rhythm down and everything, got the kinks out. So I dismiss that one. But then you look at their next 2 games. Although they only went 1-1 in those 2 games, they had a 2-point loss as an 8-point dog. On the road, very credible. And last week, 3-point dog, their last game, I should say 2 weeks ago because they've had 2 weeks to prepare, they played Arkansas State. They were +3. They rolled Arkansas State 31-7. I like this spot for Memphis. We got a team that's flying under the radar. We're getting good line value here because of the Penn State upset from Central Florida, and people looking and saying, hey, they almost beat South Carolina last week. I'm going to grab the points with Memphis. They're playing great defense this year, too. You give me a defensive home dog getting points like that against a team that's in a major flat spot. Guys, that's a sandwich I can't pass up. And you know I like sandwiches. So.
I know you do, my man. Hey, I'll tell you what, it is good to see Memphis getting some seats, too. Some bodies in the seats, I should say. And it's, you know, 'cause it's a proud program from back in the day.
Back in the day, and, you know, I mean, it's always been a basketball-first university, and to get some
But they were
excitement.
relevant in the Conference USA for a while.
For a while, they were. It's been a while, but
Right.
they were a while. But that's it. I'm going to go with Memphis here. Let's take the points. I've got this one going right down to the buzzer. We're going to make it Memphis 21-20 on Saturday as my free pick here. Grab those points. We're going to be right back. We're going to be heading. Ken's got a college football game. We got a big number in this one. We've got Baylor in West Virginia. Might be a few points in this one, too, I think.
Yeah, probably.
We'll talk about that one next. Back here, pregame.tv.